Hey, what's going on?
Happy Thursday!
Happy Thursday. Here we are, 5 weeks in a row.
Woohoo! We've
are-
kept it consistent. We've made it every time. Not on time, but we are here. So
Yes.
sorry for the delay.
Yes, life happens. That's definitely something that
Yes.
we experience. So, today, what's the topic? We're talking about what we've sort of coined as our couples toolbox. What is it? It's the interventions we use in couples therapy as therapists, along with stuff that, again, you can utilize even if you're not a therapist. If, hey, you want to utilize it with your own spouse, your partner, loved one, go ahead and do them. They're interventions that are very tangible, easy to access. And
Yep.
boom.
If you're in any sort of relationship, whether it's a friendship or romantic or family, all of these can be used with them. Well, I'd say two of them. One of them is probably more reserved just for you and your romantic partner, but we'll get to that in a minute. So.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you'll be able to differentiate on that one. Otherwise, Thanksgiving would be very awkward.
Yes,
but
very
anyways,
awkward.
we'll get back to that in a bit. So what are we? We are SessionWell. I am Adam Luke. This is,
I'm Judy Ann.
and we are both associate marriage and family therapists, and we wanted to put together a channel and a podcast, really a resource for you to help you either A, get through this road to licensure, B, give you some tools in your toolbox that you may not have, and the third one is to really build a community.
Yes. That's our number one priority.
Number one priority, because I know in my journey it felt very lonely at times, and this field can feel very isolating, and that's not what we want. So we wanted to create a space for you. We have our SessionWell page on Facebook along with the SessionWell group. And what that means is it is just basically a group full of therapists and regular old people, and we are there to talk about stuff.
Yeah, and anybody can join. We just don't want, like kind of what Adam said, we don't want anyone to be alone in this journey. So we hope that we can be a resource. You guys can be a resource for each other. And for all the people that have supported us along our way, like we're really thankful for you guys. And we just hope to continue to expand this community of therapists and non-therapists as well. So thank you guys for joining us every Thursday. We appreciate it.
Ooh. Alrighty.
Oh, but you can also, if you can't make it on Thursdays with us, you can always listen to our podcast on Google Play, iTunes, and Spotify.
Yes. So if you need to just download it real quick, listen to it in the car, that's what we have for you.
And we try to keep it to about 30 minutes, but sometimes we go over to about 45. But our goal is about 30 minutes, so it's like a quick, nice little podcast on your way to work.
Yes. All right, are we ready to go?
Yes, we are.
So we are going to preference this with the fact that we love the Gottman Institute.
Yes.
And so you will hear a lot of Gottman heavy information. And it's pretty much because we've invested a lot with them. Because we like, first of all, that it's data driven, it's evidence based. But they are pretty much the gurus to go to with couple issues.
And when we were thinking about this podcast, we were like, okay, let's pick 3 interventions that we love using with our couples. And we just randomly picked 3 of them that happen to all be from Gottman. So we were like, okay, like we're maybe a little bit Gottman obsessed, but that's okay. And so all of these are used all the time with our couples. I use it in my own relationships. I'm sure Adam does as well. And so hopefully you guys can find some use out of them, and you can always get them online. And the links will be provided for you guys as well.
Perfect. All right, so the first one that will kick it off is actually something that Judy and I went and got trained in Seattle to become facilitators for the 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work program. But why don't you start?
So I've used this before with groups. Or like, with a church group with different couples. And so I've also read it on my own. I first would recommend that if you are in any sort of relationship, it's really helpful to read it together. Because inside of it has a bunch of different exercises. It kind of just really explains Gottman's theory. And so the reason they're so well respected is because according to Gottman, he can predict divorce 91% of the time. And so it is data driven, and he basically has all these suggestions as to how he can predict divorce. And so my favorite thing out of this book would be the 4 horsemen. And I've used it almost with every couple, and also with myself too. Like, I can honestly admit which one I am, which I'll go over in a second, and I'm sure my partner that's watching out there could probably very much identify it as well. And so in chapter 3, it says how I predict divorce. And one of the signs is that if any of these 4 horsemen appear in your relationships, the chances of divorce increase. And so the 4 of them, the first one is criticism. Like, when you are communicating, you have this look like, is that you?
All right. So let's break this down. My wife is actually sitting like 10 feet off from us, off to the side. First live audience member. So it's just like I'm going over them in my head, like, okay.
But tell them what day it is for you guys and why she's here.
Okay, so we actually celebrated our 3-year anniversary was yesterday, but paychecks don't come until Thursday. So we went out and had dinner tonight. And then she was able to join us. So I am happy and blessed to have my wife Jill here.
And we're going to have her pop in for a minute in one of our other ones. You can see her face and see, who he's married to. So the first one would be criticism. And that's basically where you are going to constantly criticize your partner. That maybe in conflict or in conversations or when it's kind of really heated, your go-to is to basically just critique and point out all their flaws and why it's their fault. And kind of a little bit more blaming. And so, I don't know, Adam, is that one applied to you or no?
So I don't think it would be fair to say that we own just one of them.
Oh yeah,
like
I'm going to go through all 4.
If one person owns just one, I think it's very easy, especially in any relationship, to have moments where we both can be critical of others. I think you have to really focus in on what is the criticism that you're saying. If all you have to talk about is the criticism of the other person, and you can't actually have somewhat of an objective like receiving of criticism as well, that is the unhealthy balance. Right. When it's just like, no, you're not making any points. I would hope that I could say as a husband that I will listen at times when she's making critiques of me, and I'm like, yeah, okay, you got me on that one. That one was true.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, good. The second one is contempt. So out of the 4, I think Gottman would say that the contempt tends to be one of the worst ones. None of them are good, but this one basically says that contempt means that you have a sense of superiority over your partner. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, and you make that face of like, geez, and you kind of maybe, I think a lot of eye rolling would serve as an example of contempt. It's just like when your partner's talking, you just have this sense of that they are inferior to you and that all the stuff that they're saying isn't relevant or valid or intelligent. And so that can make your partner feel really small, which I'm sure cannot help your relationship grow at all.
Exactly. Now, just because you, if you're listening to this or watching and you're like, oh, my partner eye rolls, it's over. Like, again, there's a larger content to this part. But the contempt, and he also says, he and Julia's wife also speak a lot about the stonewalling.
Yes. So that one's the 4th one.
That's coming in later. But the contempt is really when, again, you can never have a conversation where both of you can share the same space, or what I would say the same level.
Right.
That's when it is disastrous. And I will say that I have sat with couples and worked with couples that this was definitely a very strong component walking in the door.
Right. You could feel it in the room.
The power dynamic is just, it's so powerful that, like Judy just said, everyone can feel it in the room. And there's even moments where couples will want to sort of put this on you as well.
Right.
That member, whether husband, wife, whatever, will want to sort of exert that over you as well. Now, there's 2 ways to deal with that. As a therapist, you can like immediately sort of what I call peacock and be like, oh, well, therapy, I'm in control here.
Right.
Or you can actually invite yourself to realize what that feels like for that spouse. Because you are actually sharing, wow, I can't help but in this moment feel this. Because if you're feeling it, that other spouse has felt it.
And at home, like they're basically playing out what happens at home, like right in front of you. And so you get a glimpse of what's happening with them.
Just a random statistic, most couples that show up for therapy, they show up 7 years late.
I thought it was 6. 6 to 7.
6 to 7.
Close enough.
I think it's 7.
Right, they've been miserable.
But that's not
contempt. I'm not judging you.
But it is that 6 to 7
Yeah.
year time period. So again, imagine this other partner has been feeling that type of pressure for a while.
Mm-hmm. So the third one is defensiveness. It's basically where we just defend ourselves. So it's hard for us to take some criticism or responsibility. I think that when we're defensive, I think we naturally just feel like you're attacking me. And so automatically I'm just going to put up a wall and just be really defensive and defend everything. Even though I might actually be responsible for some of the things you're pointing out, I might just naturally go into defense mode and not even want to talk about it or accept it.
So, and then also on the defensive, I sort of hinted to it a little bit earlier, but it's again, not accepting anything that's coming into your court. So it's not, because as human beings, we're going to be defensive, especially when we do have arguments with or conversations that we can feel that we're being attacked or different things come up. Mm-hmm. You can definitely feel defensive. The difference, though, is when you're not willing to recognize, like, oh, I am being defensive because of this, or I'm feeling because of that.
Right.
It's just I'm going to just continually swat it, back. No, that doesn't count.
Right.
So. And
defend everything that maybe you didn't do or anything. You're just instead of just like listening, actually hearing what your partner's saying. Because sometimes our partner they're not attacking us. At least ideally, we're hoping they're not attacking us. And so sometimes, the way it's presented, instead of just getting defensive, maybe just take the time to kind of understand where your partner is coming from, what is their intent behind what they're saying, instead of just naturally think that they're attacking you.
Yes.
And then the last one is stonewalling, which Adam mentioned a couple minutes ago. This is basically where you just completely shut down. Like, I'm super flooded. This conversation, I can't even be here right now. I'm shut off all feelings. I don't even want to talk about it, and you walk away. It's not bad to walk away from a conversation, but always remind your partner that you're going to come back to it, and just you can say, hey, I'm really overwhelmed right now. I'm really flooded. Can I take a few minutes, or can we just take a breather for like half an hour and then reconvene and be able to talk about it? I can admit that I would probably fall into the more stonewalling, even though it's weird because I'm a therapist and I have emotions and blah, blah, blah. But I do know that...
You mean you're not perfect?
No. And I know it too when I'm doing it. Like, I know it. I can still remember one of my first conversations with my partner, one of our biggest fights, like not our biggest fight, one of our first fights we've ever had, or disagreements. And I remember we had hung up because I was like, I don't want to talk anymore. And I don't believe in hanging up on your partner ever. And so we had hung up, and I was sitting there the whole time being like, you're a therapist, you're stonewalling right now, don't do it, call him back. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to call him back. But then I was like, no, be a healthy person. So then I did call him back, and that actually was a relationship changer for us, and that actually kind of fostered admiration and connection. So that actually was good, but it was definitely hard, because I would say when I'm really flooded, I don't want to talk about it anymore.
So what I'm also hearing from you is in that moment, you had the ability to go two very different directions in that relationship. Mm-hmm. And so this goes sort of to what one of my supervisors, Dr. Susan Hastings, always talked about, which is it's not necessarily the screw-ups, it's the repair.
Yes.
How do you repair that relationship or that event? Of attachment. Mm-hmm. And so that is what always blows me away, is we're always one split-second decision away from either feeding our relationship or starving it. Yeah. I will also align with you and say that I stonewall. It's something that I really, really struggle with, because I do get to a level where I'm flooded. Yeah. And even though I have the degree, I have the 2,400 hours, I have a blah, 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 whatever I have done with others, always applying it to your own life will be drastically more difficult. And it's almost like we become intellectually stubborn with the information. Like, yes. I know what I would tell my client to do right now, but I'm not doing that.
Yes, I'm trained in this. I'm a facilitator in this. Why can't I just do it in my own relationship?
7 principles of making marriage work, and I'm like, nah, I'm gonna make an 8th. It's not gonna work.
Yes.
But here's something I do want to sort of hit on the book because something I've heard from couples that I've given that book to. Because I started using it in my premarital couples.
Oh, that's good.
But you know what? I had 2 couples that book scared the tar out of.
Really?
Because
it's pretty deep.
Well, it's deep, but the Gottman 4 Horse of the Apocalypse, they said, well, they're all present. They're all present in my relationship. We are screwed.
Right, we're doomed.
The wedding's 6 weeks away. What do we do? And again, I think it really comes down to context and where your heart sits in this position. Because I don't think any marriage will ever reach a point where defensiveness will not be present in some shape or form.
Like just as a human being.
Just as a human being, right? But it also has to do with what the Gottmans talk about, turning towards and turning away. Okay? And what they mean by that is when you have situations where you're frustrated with your spouse or you're having these difficult conversations, what are you more likely to do? I'm sorry, Judy, I'm going to use your example. Okay. So there was a moment, Judy was flooded. She turned away briefly, but she corrected and then turned towards.
It was hard, but I did it. It's fine.
It is. But the payoff there is 100 times better.
Right.
And so when you have these moments where your spouse is triggered and they're flooded, they've had a terrible day, they're stonewalling, what are you going to do? Because if both spouses decide to just turn away, then your marriage is going to turn away.
Right, absolutely.
But if you're going to turn towards each other, and this isn't about allowing yourself to be stepped on or in some way lowering your values, but it's about giving ourselves grace and mercy in our relationship.
And give your partner grace, too.
Because that is, if you can put that at the core of your relationship, no matter what stage you are in, marriage, dating, fiance, whatever it is, but if you put grace in the middle and realize that there is going to be times that this person gives you grace that you do not deserve, and so you have I hate to use the word obligation, but you really do have like the necessity to facilitate grace to an individual that may be hurting, may have something going on. And in that turning towards, you're only going to get better.
Absolutely. So if you liked anything from that was just one chapter, and you can get so much out of this book. So even if you're not in a relationship, just reading this book for your own self-awareness is awesome, because it applies to other relationships as well. I'm sure I don't just stonewall with my partner. I'm sure I do it with my family, with my friends. And so if you want to get this book, it's also on Amazon. It's on the Gottman's website, which we will connect in our podcast as well. So that's just our first product. This is like kind of foundational in my personal opinion.
There's a lot of books you can choose. Yeah. I've read a lot of the books myself. This one, it just seems to be the easiest one for me to grab. And so that's why I say, even if you're not a therapist, pick it up.
Yeah, this is like a necessity on your bookshelf. Okay, next one.
So this is the one that I love. And I think Judy does too, but I use this one constantly. These cards actually go with me to work every day. So this is the Gottman Love Map card.
It also comes with this set too.
Yes.
So it comes in this box, and it has both sets in it.
So you have the love maps, and then you have the open-ended questions. Now, why do I like these cards? The reason being is you can literally, and what I do with my clients is I send them home with them, and I'll normally ask them to just do one deck 1 week and the other deck the other week.
Or like one a day.
Wow. Okay. I normally say, hey, give me 3. Remember the 3 cards over the week, and we'll talk about it. So I'll just pick one out. What kind of present would your partner like best, right? And so you might sit there and be like, these things are kind of stupid. Well, actually, what I've found is a lot of these questions may be questions you've never asked your spouse or your significant other, because we might ask a lot of questions about each other and get to know each other in different ways, but we won't know certain questions that, I just never asked that.
And the whole reason that these are kind of created, the reason they're called love maps, is because when you commit yourself to a partner, you are basically giving them an inner representation of your being. So it's supposed to be a map into who you are. And so you're supposed to be able to share that map with each other by deepening it. And then life gives you twists and turns. And so you're constantly trying to add to the map. Sometimes there are mountains in the map. Sometimes it's a curvy freeway. Sometimes it is a straight path and it's flat. And so you kind of want it together as you're growing in your relationship to continue to make this map for both of you, and also sharing your past map before them and now. So it's just really supposed to deepen friendship and trust and commitment in your relationship.
And so just to piggyback on that, I loved when we were doing the training to become facilitators. They had a great video that they used of basically, again, if you don't have a map of your relationship, you don't know where the heck you're going.
Right.
So you don't know the areas that are dangerous. You don't know the areas that are pleasurable. You don't know the areas that are going to require more work than the other. So, like, I found another one that I liked that I remembered one of the couples brought up, because it's something you don't really talk about. Name one of your partner's major rivals or enemies.
Okay, yeah. And that changes, too, before when you first meet your partner and maybe currently.
Exactly. Because what really brought this one to the surface for this one couple was the fact that they were not on the same page of like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that this person that you may have to deal with all the time was a person that caused you such conflict, right? Mm-hmm. So when you define this more, you get a better picture. Yeah. Well, maybe that's why my partner has more difficult days than not.
Right.
Is because they are constantly in contact with this one person.
Exactly.
Oh goodness! So
Let's
the reason
play
why
the
reason why I'm a little hesitant on this is Judy goes,
I don't like he's stalling.
Why don't you bring your wife over and then oh, by the way, we'll use these love map cards and okay.
So Jill's our first guest. So because it's their anniversary, it's their 3-year anniversary.
3 years.
Okay, we're gonna do a quick 3 of these with you guys. So let's do a quick answer. Okay, so do you want to do an open-ended question or do you want to do a love map? That's Jill. All right.
So you might not be able to see Jill, but she's gonna pick.
Do you want to poke your head in, Jill? Just say hi. They want to see your lovely face. Come this way. Say hi. This is Jill. Thanks for joining us. So is she gonna ask you this question?
Yeah, she'll ask me, and then I'll ask her. Step up a little more so they can hear it.
Actually, she stay right here. Sit next to me.
Oh boy!
Yay! I mean, couples counseling.
So I'm not
yes.
Okay. What are 2 of your partner's aspirations, hopes, and wishes?
2 of them. Okay.
So you're supposed to be guessing.
Yeah.
First. Okay.
Free reign?
I guess.
Okay.
I love this.
I know, so we'll go surfacey and then we'll go sort of deeper. Is I know that one of your aspirations is to be a mom one day. Mm-hmm. That's a big one. Your other aspiration that I would think is you have always had a dream of opening like a little boutique shop of antiques or different cool things. Would that be correct? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. Is there anything you'd like to add to that for him to know more about your inner map?
I don't know. I am so prepared.
Hey, this is actually exactly what it's like. So, Judy did really well in throwing us to the wolves on here. So,
this is unscripted, guys.
I think it's there you go. Yeah, I think it's mostly to be content in what we have.
Mm-hmm. And what life throws at us.
Yeah. I think that's a big thing and the underlying point of it all. So for me, at least.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay. So now, do I answer this for you, or
Sure.
Is that how it works?
How about you pick a different one?
Okay, so what do I do?
So read it out so that everyone hears it.
Does your partner have a secret ambition, and what is it? It's kind of the same question, I feel like, but maybe not. It's a little deeper.
Okay.
So you have a secret ambition that maybe only you're aware of.
I'm like, can we share these?
Hopefully it's appropriate.
I don't know. You share a lot of them with me.
Well, then just pick one.
Let's see.
Remember, I'm a professor.
I know you are.
I'm still 90 days at a new job. let's.
I don't know if it's necessarily a secret. I mean, you haven't voiced it, as far as I know, to quite a lot of people.
Oh, perfect. What?
Would be to, well, you have like a bunch of books in your head.
Yeah, I do.
So, I'd say to at least have, you know,
I would
your
love
own
to
series.
write. Yeah,
The Luke series instead of the Gottman
write.
series.
Easy.
I mean, yeah. So, yeah.
That's definitely one.
Yeah.
So-
Okay.
Is there anything you want to add to that so she can know more about you and Matt?
Writing is definitely a huge passion. Something I've been wanting to find more time for. I guess it's the ambition that we all feel when we get into this career. We have the ambition of trying to be successful. I mean, that is. Yes. Secondary gain to why Judy and I do podcasts is we're hoping that something catches, and so we want that. And that's definitely the driving force behind what I do. Not necessarily just the money, but the fact that there is an ability, I think a weight behind the idea of how many people you can affect for good. That you can be the positive ripple in life. So I do feel like I have things to share, and I can work with difficult populations, and we're all puzzle pieces in this. Whatever therapy you think you are good at, don't discredit yourself in that. Allow that to sort of shine through. I know for me, I am a combative therapist, and what I mean is it's confrontational. Sometimes I get the people that they say, "Oh no, I'm referring them to you because they're more difficult case," and it's like they just feel like people to me. So we all have our different cups of tea per se. Our different flavors of therapy. I've always said therapy is like ice cream. Some people are at Rocky Road, other are pistachio, and so someone out there is craving your flavor of therapy. So that's who I'm going to be.
Craving your flavor.
Yeah.
Yay!
In ice cream.
And
So.
Thanks, guys.
Well, thank you, Jill.
Happy anniversary.
thank you.
I was going to have us do 3, but we're kind of long on time anyway.
Yeah.
So it's okay, but thanks, Jill. Okay, we have our last. That's the Love Map deck of cards. You can also get that online as well. Okay, we have our last one.
The last one, which we'll try to make quick, which is hysterical,
Yeah.
because it's about sex.
Woo, sex.
And so you don't want to rush that. Yeah. Oh, a quick segment today. Anyways, this is the one that I really liked. We went to, again, it was at the same training that we did the 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work, that they had this book. And the book is called the Got Sex Series. It is actually really cool. And the reason why I say that is not just because it's Gottman, but because it's got so many resources. And again, this is for the couple of all age, all stages. Mm-hmm. It has an awesome DVD that is very interaction based. You can select things, you can watch videos. And they're appropriate videos. But then it also has, this art and science of lovemaking, research-based skills for great sex life. It's all these different lessons that you can go through. Probably my greatest experience with this as a therapist is I, at one time, handed this book to a couple, and they said, we went home, we read the first lesson, and immediately had sex.
Awesome.
So that
Success
is what
story.
therapists want their clients to do, their couples. that's what you want to do.
Right.
But that's the hysterical part is it's definitely each lesson has that taboo, like, oh, we're talking about sex, but it also has a very deep, more intimate side.
Right.
We sometimes, I'll just straight say it, I'm breaking bro code. Men can think intimate and sex are the same thing. Hate to break it to you guys, they're also very different.
Right. And intimacy can be built without having sex as well.
Exactly.
But I think just even having the conversation about sex with your partner, I think builds intimacy.
Exactly, it does, because again, sometimes I think in society we're way too focused on instant gratification, so we don't talk about certain things, and that's where when you hear people say like, "Oh, the sex was really awkward."
Yeah.
Why was it awkward? Well, because we weren't on the same page. Well, what does that look like? And again, we're constantly hinting to the, well, did you really talk about it, or did you just end up 3 margaritas down and the clothes off, like that?
Or doing what you thought they wanted, but never asking them, what do you actually like?
Especially when we're getting into a world where consent is a very important thing, and we need to have consent and conversations before we have these actions,
Right.
because this can stop a lot of things, and especially when we're talking about something that is such life impacting. It's just best for everyone if we're on the same page.
Right.
So like, I'll just read out the lesson. So lesson 1 is creating a different attitude about sex. That's a great lesson when, if you've sort of pieced it together already, how do you react just normally when the word sex is thrown out, or when you put sex in the content or the context of being with your partner?
And a lot of times the way we grew up too, our lens about sex can be very drastically different from your partner. And so having that conversation of, growing up, like, how did your parents teach you about sex? What did you think about sex? Did you have sex? Did you not have sex? Did you wait? Like, those kinds of conversations. Because I think that not everybody has the same concept about sex. Or, like, how often do you want to have it in a marriage? Is your expectation, like, every day? Is it once a month? And if it's totally different, if you have a partner that wants it, like, 3 times a week, but you only want it once a month, like, there's going to be some conflict there. So at least having that conversation, ideally before, going into marriage, would be helpful. And I think that resource allows you to have those conversations.
And even if you didn't talk about that before you got married, does not mean that all of a sudden it's not going to work.
Oh, right.
But great points. The next one I'm going to go to is lesson 2, the 3 skills of intimate conversation. That one, gentlemen, skip ahead, read that one. Because it really opened up my eyes. Just because it does change again what that intimacy level conversation is about. Because sometimes, guess what, guys? Porn does not teach you how to be a good lover in the way of loving a woman's mind.
Right. Or making us feel safe with you and protected. And
there's a lot of social stereotypes that are not true.
Right.
Moving on, building sex love maps. So boom, back to the love maps. So a deck of cards I don't have but I want to get is with this book. There's a deck called Salsa Cards.
Oh yeah.
It's by Gottman's as well, the Gottman Institute, and it is the love map cards, but put into the context of sexual questions, intimacy questions, intimate. And so that's definitely one that I would get the deck and play around with. The 4th lesson is initiating and refusing sex, which, guess what? Everyone has a right to refuse sex.
Right. And refusing sex doesn't mean that we don't find you attractive or that we're not... Probably most people when they're refusing sex, it doesn't have anything to do with your partner. It can literally be because you had a long day at work, you were stressed out, you're just not in the mood. But I think people, when we're rejected by our partners, we feel like, oh my gosh, like, we're not good enough, we're not attractive, they are looking elsewhere, or I'm not skinny enough or hot enough or anything like that. Those
negative narratives just come flaring out, right? Because especially for a lot of us in our relationships, sex and intimacy and how our partners view us is a very important backdrop to how we respect and view ourselves, right?
Right.
So if you're refused in a sexual manner, then you can feel like, oh, then I obviously suck at everything.
Right.
But
having
it's
those
not true.
conversations will be beneficial.
Number 5 is talking about sex. So again, that swings back to what Judy was talking about of how did your parents, how do you even just talk about the subject? I want to get to number 6 because it's actually hysterical. Because I had a client be like, what? Lesson 6, talking during sex. You can do it. It's amazing. We're moving on.
Some people like it more than others.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. And 7, fun, sexy things to do together. And that is actually the salsa deck section. So.
Because you should be having fun. It should be sexy. You should be into each other.
Yes.
And so hopefully all of these 3 resources, maybe one, maybe all 3, there's so many more out there. If you have ones that you want to share, please comment and let us know, and we'll review them too, or let you jump in and talk about them. But our whole point of this is that it's not just about romantic relationships, it's in all relationships. All of these 3 things can help you build relationships in a really healthy way.
Yes. I just want to close out one last thing with this. Also, if you're sort of listening to us talk about it and you're like, oh, I think I'd be too embarrassed to bring that up to my partner, or how do I even order this thing? I think that is your dare into you need to get a book like this.
Absolutely.
Because if you are even feeling embarrassed about bringing something up like this, you really need to talk with your partner, because there's a lot to deal with that thing. Yeah. This should be a book that's very fun. This should be the best workbook you and your partner have ever had.
So look forward to doing this workbook.
Yes.
On date night.
Go home and do
or anniversaries.
Therapy. Lots of therapy. Anyways, so that is our go-to toolbox. Just a shout out or mention. Also, Prepare and Enrich.
Yes, I love Prepare and Enrich.
Prepare and Enrich is a great. Basically, it's another assessment tool. We don't have any examples because what happens is both partners would take a test. The test basically sends the facilitator or the therapist a packet saying, hey, this is what we found out is kind of cool and interesting about these 2 individuals. Talk about it.
Yep.
But
it's really good with premarital couples.
And you're Prepared and Rich certified, right?
Yep.
And I am too. We have a lot of friends that are therapists that are also Prepared and Rich certified. So if it's something you are thinking about you'd like to do with your couple, please reach out. And
Hope International University, where we went to school, they offer it, I think, almost practically every year. So a lot of us have been certified through them.
Yep. So we can hook you up to someone.
Because of time, we just want to quickly wrap up, but we wanted to see, was there any comments or questions or anything? I didn't want to miss it.
Also, let them know the YouTube video.
Okay, yeah, we're also on YouTube too. Please join.
Love Maps video.
I'm sorry. Just kidding.
Yeah.
So we did a video a while back on the love maps, so you can find that also on our channel. And so there's a whole video on that as well.
And we go a little more in depth.
Yes.
Because, we were sort of flying through these. So a lot of the stuff you'll hear us talk about, we have already done videos that are uploaded to the YouTube channel.
Oops. Is there anything
Let's see here.
and so there's a whole video on Oop, that's my voice. I'm not very technology savvy. Okay.
Our good friend Hanukkah is on. She's HIU alumni. Let's see. George Garcia throwing me under the bus.
What'd he say?
Sweating bullets.
Hey, George.
As always, the good AJ Jackson.
Woohoo! Yay, boyfriend.
Yeah, good boyfriend.
Good boyfriend.
So, that's about it. We appreciate, again, everyone that drops in on the live stream. We appreciate. We also appreciate those that take the time to share it on your page or in the groups that you're in. And then especially you who is driving into work or driving around trying to find ways to embrace yourself but also grow yourself at the same time.
And if there's anything else that you guys want to see or hear about, let us know.
Please.
Please join us. We would love to have you.
Well, guys, you have a wonderful week. We are going to call it a day.
Yep. Have a good night. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.